I grew up like most kids. My dad was Marine Corps. They were married. My mom and him were married till I was 8 years old, and then they were divorced. I grew up in both different homes throughout my teenage years. My mother was an addict. I started partying with her when I was about 12 or 13. And I always thought it was normal because it was the way I was raised. And it wasn't until my teenage years and my young adult years that society did not accept that behavior. So once I started getting in trouble, I spent most of my time between the age of 18 and 30 in and out of jail. And the final straw for me was in 2014 in February 3rd. My mom OD'd, and I went to her funeral. It was the first time that me and my brother and my sister had been together in about 15 years. My brother and my niece put me on a bus back to Florida, and that was the last time I saw my brother. He died 3 months later in a motorcycle accident. I decided to move back up to Indiana from Florida to be with his kids and his widow. I'd pretty much quit the drugs at that point. It was mostly drinking, and I spiraled out of control pretty quick. When I drink, I tend to get violent, and I ended up in jail. A man by the name of Pastor Steve Malik. I had known him previous, and he had come and seen me in jail, and he had asked me if I wanted to go to Life Challenge. 7 years before, my buddy Neil, who was a friend with Steve's, had taken me to Life Challenge, and I had an interview. And I remember walking in the front doors, and I remember they were calling each other brother and sister, and I was like, get me out of here. These people are freaks. And come to find out 7 years later, I was right back there. At first, it was hard. It's a very strict program. About 3 months into the program, my sister had come and seen me, and she is not a Christian. And we were walking around the property, and she had looked at me and she said, something's different about you. And I guess that's when it kind of clicked that something better was available. And I remember when I first went in just feeling so helpless, like thinking about like, I don't have any clothes, I don't have a job, I don't have a vehicle, I have nowhere to live, like, you know, and then you're just flooded with these emotions. And then you start dealing with the things you've done to people. And I was not a good human being by any means. I was destructive to everything around me. Not only was I destroying my life, I was destroying the lives that people cared for me. I guess it was about then that I decided that if I was gonna do this, I was gonna do it. So I went in, full tilt boogie. I started growing a relationship with God on a personal level that I had never experienced. I'd been in and out of church, a mother being an addict, you know, we'd go and then we wouldn't, and then we'd go and we wouldn't. And so this relationship started to build, and it was unique and it was powerful. I could start to see things in myself that I didn't like. And I was forced to look in a mirror at myself and say, is this what you want out of life? And I didn't. I was miserable. I've tried to take my life a few times. I wasn't even good at that. And I guess the real change came about 4 or 5 months in the program. I decided that I needed something different. I wanted something different. And so I went for it. And my clean date is January 1st, 2014. So I'll have 4 years here in a few months. And I guess my message for anybody out there listening is that helplessness, that fear that it's never going to get better, it's a lie straight out of hell. And if you put the work in, God is going to meet you. And that's one thing I can promise you, is it's not going to be some miracle that all of a sudden it's going to get better. It's going to take hard work. It's going to be a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of dealing with the ugliness that is you as a human outside of God's will. And I pray that if you're struggling with anything that's a stumbling block, it doesn't have to be drugs. It could be porn, it could be video games, it could be anger, it could be a lot of things that Satan will use to fool you. Find somebody that loves God, and don't be scared to share your fears, your frustrations. And if I could ever give anybody advice, is don't give up. Some people it's quick, and some people it takes years. I've been going to rehab since I was 17 years old. It took half my life to get where I am now. The first half destroying it, but don't give up. There is hope in the blood of Jesus Christ, and that's one thing that I can promise. I can't promise that things get easier, because sometimes they don't, but I can promise that there is something special in that relationship and that surrender. And that's about it. Thanks for letting me share.